One midnight, in the heart of a storm, a young woman took refuge in an abandoned garage. She was running away, but the ones chasing her weren't ordinary people, and the man hiding her was as dark as his past, but as honest as his heart. That night, both of their lives would change forever. The truth would come to light, the silence would be broken, because some wounds are healed by justice. The rain wasn't just falling. The sky seemed to be pouring its anger onto the city as if it had lost all patience. The drops hit the streets with such force that it felt like the clouds had cracked open. The thunder was so close, so sudden, that people couldn't help but flinch. At the edge of the city, under faded paint clinging to rusted fences and old signs that rattled in the wind, Jonas Weber wiped his hands with a greasy rag. The rag had long stopped being clean. It was just moving the dirt around now. His little shop looked more like a shed than a garage. The roof was leaking, one of the lifts was broken, and the other was almost collapsing. The vending machine in the corner only took coins but gave nothing in return. Jonas was closing up for the night. Another day had passed, and the till was almost empty. His stomach growled, but he didn't care. He was used to it, just like he was used to people ignoring him. He was only 29, but he carried the weariness of a lifetime on his shoulders. This town, which once praised his father, had now left his son to choke on debt and dust. As he stepped through small puddles in his wet boots, he headed for the door to lock up. Then a sound, a sharp, determined, almost desperate knock. Then another. Jonas furrowed his brow. "We're closed," he called without even turning around. But the knocking continued. Now it was faster, more frantic. He suddenly turned around and saw her. She was drenched, her hair stuck to her face, her eyes wide open, her gaze pleading. A young woman stood at the sliding door of the garage. She was clutching her backpack tightly, as if her whole life was hidden inside it. "Please," she said, her voice trembling. "I have nowhere to go." Jonas didn't move. It was strange enough that she was here in the middle of this storm. Her soft jacket was ruined by the weather, and her hands trembled not from the cold, but from fear. Her slight accent as she spoke. Maybe she was from Eastern Europe or somewhere nearby. Her eyes were scanning the rundown shop behind her, like it was a fortress. "I don't need much," she whispered. "Just a roof. For tonight. I'm lost. There's no room at the hotel. The bus won't be here till morning. Please." Jonas should have turned her away. That's what he thought at first. This wasn't a shelter. He wasn't a savior. But when she said, "Please," and her voice cracked, it felt like a weight in his chest. He sighed and pushed the rusty door's bolt aside. "You can stay," he said reluctantly, "but only for tonight. It's neither warm nor safe here." A smile appeared on the woman's face, but it wasn't the smile of someone who felt relieved. It was the smile of someone who had heard no all their life and was now hearing yes for the first time in disbelief. "I'm Lena," she said as she stepped inside. "Thank you. Really, you have no idea." Jonas locked the door, then threw an old blanket at her. "Make yourself at home," he grumbled. But Lena didn't complain. She curled up on an old car seat in the corner of the garage, wrapped the blanket around herself as if it were a luxurious quilt. For the first time that night, her shivering stopped. Jonas went to his workbench. His back was to her. He had a strange feeling inside. Would he regret this decision tomorrow? He didn't know her. He didn't trust her. But what he didn't know was this. When he opened his eyes in the morning, the balance of his life would shift. This quiet, foreign girl, this wet tourist, trembling with fear, but with a strange wisdom in her eyes, wasn't just someone who was lost. She was running from something much bigger, much darker. Jonas didn't sleep much that night. In fact, he never really did. Piles of bank letters on his bedside and an eviction notice in his inbox were enough to keep him awake through the night. But tonight was different. Tonight, there was another kind of breath in the room. Lena's breath. Calm, deep, the breath of someone who, for the first time, felt safe. Jonas lay in the iron bed in the back room, staring blankly at the ceiling fan that no longer spun. The storm outside had slowly died down, but something inside him still stirred restlessly. This young woman, Lena, what was she doing here at this hour, in such a deserted place? Why hadn't she called anyone? Why did she look so scared? As the questions clashed in his mind, time passed, and sleep drifted further away. Finally, he gave up, got out of bed, and carefully cracked open the garage door, trying to muffle the sound of his footsteps. He expected to find her where he left her, curled up in the car's seat. But Lena wasn't there. His heart raced for a moment. His eyes scanned the room. "Lena," he called, his voice harsh but filled with hidden concern. Then a sound came, like metal hitting metal. Was it a key, a wrench, or a door handle? Jonas immediately turned toward the noise, taking a few steps until he reached the corner with shelves. There she was. Her hands were trembling, her eyes locked on the object in her hands. "Hey!" Jonas shouted, quickly closing the distance between them with anger. "Are you stealing something?" Lena's voice cracked. No, I swear. I was just looking for this." She raised her hand. In her fingers was a small, toothed pendant. Worn out, scratched, a piece carrying the marks of time. Jonas' eyes widened. "That was on my dad's shelf," he murmured. "No one has opened that drawer in 5 years." Lena's lips parted. "It was just sitting there," she whispered. "I used to have something similar. That's why." Her voice trailed off. She held the pendant out to Jonas, avoiding his gaze. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to be disrespectful." Jonas took the pendant, but didn't put it back. His anger had immediately faded. There was something in Lena's voice. It felt like what he had felt when his father's coffin was lowered into the ground. Time seemed to stop for a moment. Life briefly placed its weight on his shoulders. He sighed. "Are you hungry?" he asked in a softer tone. Lena looked up, blinking as if she hadn't understood what he said. "I haven't eaten in a while," she answered slowly. Jonas nodded toward the small kettle in the corner. "The coffee's awful. The eggs are older than me, but both are yours." And then, a small smile appeared on Lena's face. Quiet, sincere, full of gratitude. They chatted without talking much, over burnt toast and overcooked eggs, just enough to feel comfortable. Lena said she was traveling across America on some kind of healing journey. She needed to get away. She didn't go into details. Jonas didn't ask. Someone who didn't want to talk about their past wouldn't probe into someone else's. But something Lena said stuck in his mind like a nail. "I've always thought that," she said, taking a sip of her bitter coffee. "If you're nice to strangers, maybe one day someone will be nice to you." Then a pause. Her eyes met Jonas' eyes. "That's why I left," she said quietly. "From where?" Jonas asked. Lena didn't answer. Her eyes narrowed slightly. "From everything." Later that morning, a white SUV slowly passed in front of the garage. The windows were tinted. There was no license plate. Jonas didn't think much of the passing car until he looked at Lena and saw the hands holding her coffee cup trembling. "Do you know that car?" he asked. Lena didn't answer. She only whispered, in almost inaudible tones, "I think they found me." The storm was no longer outside. It was inside now. Jonas' gaze became fixed, his hands clenched involuntarily. The tension in the air was palpable. It was that kind of intensity, a feeling of danger you could sense instinctively, without needing any concrete proof. "That car," he said in a low voice. "Lena, what's going on? Tell me now." Lena didn't speak at first. Her eyes drifted to the cracked window, as if expecting someone to burst through at any moment. Then she quietly tucked her hair behind her ear and placed her cup on the table. "Have you ever trusted the wrong person, Jonas?" she asked. "I mean really trusted, as much as you left your future in their hands." And then, Lena said, her voice trembling, "I just watched. While it crushed my life, he still had that fake smile on his face." Jonas was silent, but his eyes spoke. Lena continued, "He told me I was special, that I'd be protected, that he'd take care of me, as long as I kept quiet." Her hands were trembling even more now. "But then I found out he was lying to everyone, not just me. Everyone, everything. And when I tried to leave, he made it clear that he was planning to make me pay for it." Jonas furrowed his brows. "Who?" he asked in a low voice. Lena looked up. The pain in her eyes was so intense that for a moment Jonas held his breath. This pain couldn't be faked. It was the kind that gnaws at a person's soul for years. "His name is Nathaniel Crow," Lena said. "A billionaire. Clean image. He gives speeches at charity galas, donates to children's hospitals. But he's not the person people think he is." Jonas recognized the name. Nathaniel Crow. Of course. His name was behind the city's big construction projects. Smiling photos in magazines, interviews with politicians. But when paired with the fear in Lena's eyes, that bright image shattered. "What could you possibly have to do with him?" he asked. Lena's voice was now barely a whisper. I Was his personal assistant, she said. But he didn't hire me for that. The air in the room seemed to stop at that moment. Everything went silent. I recorded some things, Lena said, looking Jonas straight in the eyes. Voice messages, documents, money transfers. If these get out, it will ruin him. Jonas' gaze fixed on one spot. As the reality slowly sank in, it felt like a weight pressing down on his shoulders. So, those SUVs, he said in a quiet voice. They're not the police. They're not here to talk. For a while, no one spoke. The silence carried a tension that was about to explode. Then Jonas walked slowly to the workbench. He opened a drawer, pulled out an old sports bag, and threw it at Lena's feet. Pack your things in here, he said. Lena looked up at him in shock. What are you doing? Jonas took a quick glance outside at the garage door, then turned back to her. I'm helping you disappear. Lena's lips trembled. Why? She asked. Jonas grabbed his car keys and a crowbar. Because I've been crushed, used, and then thrown away in my life, he said. And I can see in your eyes that you really need to get away. You don't deserve a life like that. For the first time, Lena's shoulders slumped, but it wasn't defeat. It was an expression of trust. It wasn't retreat. It wasn't surrender. It was shelter, connection. She placed her backpack into the bag. Just as she was about to zip it up, a loud bang hit the metal garage door. Then another. Open the door. A male voice shouted, cold and commanding. It was like a threat bouncing off the walls. Jonas froze. Lena flinched. She didn't speak. She simply grabbed Jonas' hand. Without hesitation, he pulled her out through the back door of the garage. They began running down the narrow alley. Their feet sank into the mud, their breaths misting into the air. They didn't stop until they reached an old, shabby truck hidden behind the restaurant across the street. They threw themselves into the seats. Jonas turned the key in the ignition. The engine rumbled and then quickly came to life. The tires screamed as they gripped the asphalt, and the truck shot onto the highway. But when Jonas glanced in the rearview mirror, he saw them. Two black SUVs, their headlights gleaming, had followed them. They're following us, Lena whispered. Jonas clenched his jaw. His teeth locked together. His voice was firm. Good. Let them chase us. He spoke without taking his eyes off the road. They think you're just a scared girl. A little one running away with her secrets. But they don't know. I've got nothing left to lose. Jonas pressed his foot harder on the gas pedal. The engine growled in response, and the rain picked up speed on the windshield again, as if the sky was watching their escape this time, whispering that they wouldn't be able to run. Lena sat in the passenger seat. He looked at her, really looked at her for the first time. He no longer saw her as a mechanic drowning in debt, dressed in greasy overalls. Now, there was something else in her eyes. Trust. Not hope. Maybe, but a shoulder to lean on. A conscience that couldn't be bought. Perhaps the last honest person left. The car wound its way along the old highway, curving behind the hills. The hum of the road turned into a buzzing sound inside the cabin, and Lena's fingers began to unconsciously twist the frayed edge of her bag. They didn't speak for a while. In the silence, only the rhythm of their escape echoed. Finally, in a voice barely louder than the sound of the wheels, she asked, "Where are we going?" "To a place no one would think of," Jonas muttered. "My uncle used to have a hunting cabin. It's been abandoned for years. No electricity, no signal, no people." Lena took a deep breath. "Great," she said simply. Even in that moment, the thought of a refuge so isolated gave her a strange sense of peace. They stayed quiet for a long time, but Lena could feel it. Jonas wasn't just focused on the road. His mind was somewhere else. His eyes were on the road, but his thoughts were lost in the darkest corners of the past. "Jonas," she said softly, "why are you really helping me?" He didn't answer. His eyes remained fixed on the windshield. The rain danced on the glass, as if trying to wash away the burden inside. Finally, the silence was broken by Jonas' voice. It was rough, unexpectedly soft. "I had a sister," he said. Lena's head turned quickly to him. He had never spoken about his family before. "She was 17, Jonas continued. "Her name was Willa. She was the best thing this world ever gave me. She was smarter than me, funnier. After our dad died, she was the one who kept me alive. She forced me to stay human." Lena's throat tightened. "What happened?" she asked, her voice trembling. Jonas swallowed, his jaw clenched. She worked part-time at a car wash. One night, she stayed late. A rich guy's driver came and said he'd left his wallet. Willa went out to return it, but she never came back. His hands gripping the steering wheel turned white, his joints tense. A heavy silence fell inside the car. The only sound was the wipers swishing across the glass, as if even the wheels of time had stopped turning. The next morning, they found her body by the river. No fingerprints, no witnesses. The security cameras had been erased. It was like she never existed. Lena's eyes filled with tears. Did they ever find the person who did it? Jonas lowered his head, his voice dropping. Yes, he said. I found him. Lena blinked, not knowing what to say for a moment. Jonas turned to her for just a second. The darkness in his eyes, it was the silence of another life. Nathaniel Crow, he said. The man you worked for. The man you ran from. A cold shiver ran through Lena. How do you know? I found a burner phone among Willa's things, Jonas said. Photos, messages. Willa didn't know how dangerous he was, but she was smart enough. She started documenting everything. He paused, his breath catching. I shared it with the police, the FBI, anyone who would listen. But you know what happened? Lena couldn't answer, but she already saw the answer in Jonas' eyes. They shut me up, he said. They said the phone was stolen. The evidence was invalid. Even a cop threatened to block me, said I'd be charged if I kept pushing. Lena's chest rose and fell. I'm so sorry. I lost Willa, and that man got away with it, Jonas said, his voice almost a whisper now. But it won't be like that this time. They turned off the highway onto a narrow, rocky road. The car bounced along. The trees around them thickened, intertwining with the darkness that seemed to wrap around them like claws. Finally, the cabin appeared. Old, quiet, hidden from sight. Lena took a deep breath, as if for the first time in hours she could finally breathe. When they entered, Jonas grabbed the crowbar, stepped across the creaky wooden porch, and opened the door. Inside was dusty. There were no cameras, no people, only the wind and the distant cawing of crows. Jonas stood in the middle of the room, turned to her. Do you have the evidence with you? Lena opened her bag, carefully pulling out a small external hard drive. It's all here, she whispered. Money transfers, contracts, secret camera footage. Everything he's been hiding for 5 years. A glint appeared in Jonas' eyes. Then we're not running anymore, he said. We're going to destroy him. Just then, the window shattered. A bullet slammed into the back window of the cabin. Lena screamed. Jonas instinctively grabbed her by the shoulder, pulling her down to the floor. The bullet hit just a few inches above Lena's head. They found us, Lena said in a hoarse voice, her eyes wide. Jonas showed no panic on his face. He didn't even flinch. He quickly grabbed the hard drive, pulled an old metal box from under the floorboards. He placed the drive inside and handed the box to Lena. Run, he said. Now, go. Get out the back door. Jonas shouted, his voice echoing off the wooden walls of the cabin. Down the slope, into the woods. There's a hidden path to Old Quarry Road. I'll keep them busy. Lena hesitated, her eyes locked on him in fear. Jonas. The man extended his hand and gently touched her cheek. Willa didn't get justice, he said, his voice weary but resolute. But you still can. Tears fell from Lena's eyes as she turned away and started running. As her footsteps gradually faded, Jonas turned to the door. The doorknob rattled, then exploded. The cabin door was thrown open with a loud crash. 3 men barged in. They were all dressed in black, armed. They weren't ordinary thugs. They were trained. They were cold-blooded. But Jonas didn't back down. He took cover behind the old fireplace, grabbed the rusted flare gun off the wall, his last remaining weapon, and fired. A bright flash, smoke, and screams. The men hesitated for a moment. Jonas didn't waste the opportunity. He darted sideways and leapt through the window, shards of glass embedding in his skin, dirt scraping against his body, but he didn't care. His breath was ragged, his lungs burning. He wasn't running. He was buying time. Enough time for Lena to escape. Meanwhile, Lena was running through the woods. It was as if she had been born among those trees. Branches scratched her face, rocks scraped her knees, but she didn't stop. With every step, her lungs were on fire. With every breath, she fought to stay alive. She could hear them behind her. Branches snapping, dry leaves crunching. They were getting closer, their footsteps as deadly as bullets. The bulletproof box was pressed to her chest. Not just documents, But Jonas's life was inside. And in a way, Willa's too. For a moment, she burst into an open space, nearly falling into the middle of the road. It was a forgotten forest road. Cracked asphalt, rusted signs. But there was an engine sound ahead. A truck. No, not just any truck. A ranger's vehicle. Lena raised her hands, shouting. She dropped to her knees. Help, please. I have the evidence. He'll die. The vehicle screeched to a halt. A man in uniform stepped out. A real forest ranger. A real badge. His eyes widened in surprise. But when he saw the bulletproof box in Lena's hands and the pleading look in her eyes, he understood without needing an explanation. Get in the vehicle, he simply said. Meanwhile, the area around the cabin was soaked in blood and mud. Jonas had taken cover behind a tree on the slope. His side was bleeding. His eyes were wild, his breath ragged. The men had surrounded him. One of them raised his gun, silenced. You should have stayed a broken mechanic, he said. But before he could pull the trigger, the sirens went off. Red and blue lights flashed between the trees. The engine sounds grew louder, and then the sound of a helicopter. The forest suddenly came alive. Nathaniel's men turned their heads in confusion. At that moment, Jonas attacked. He knocked the nearest man to the ground, trying to grab the weapon, his fists flying. Then another hand fired a gun. This time, the gunfire wasn't from one of them. It was from a forest ranger. Then another shot. And then a fully equipped team. Within minutes, it was all over. Nathaniel Crow's men were neutralized, cuffed. Jonas, covered in blood and exhausted, collapsed to the ground. His breath was shallow, his eyes were closing. But then, when he opened his eyes again, he saw her. Lena. Her face was wet with tears. She was kneeling, holding one of his hands tightly. As if she let go of that hand, the world would collapse with it. You did it, Jonas whispered, his voice barely audible. You saved me, Lena said, her eyes filled. No, Jonas said, with a weak but genuine smile on his lips. You saved me. The footage was broadcast. Documents, money transfers, voice recordings, bribes, and photos of the young girls who had died. Everything. Nathaniel Crow's fake empire, built over the years, burned brightly in the midday sun. Arrests, investigations, headlines. Half the country watched as the man once known as the philanthropist of the decade was dragged through marble corridors in handcuffs. Where he once walked like a king, now he was living his downfall. Jonas sat in his little garage, stitches still healing, watching everything unfold on the old television. Lena sat beside him. She was holding one of the two cups in her hands. He'll get life in prison, she said quietly. Jonas shook his head. It won't bring Willa back. No, Lena said, her voice gentle but firm. But you gave him a voice again. Jonas turned to her, really looked at her. The frightened, soaking wet young woman who had knocked on the garage door that night was gone. In her place stood someone strong, standing tall. In her eyes, there was no longer just fear. There was resistance, experience, and determination. Just like in him. They weren't the same anymore. Broken, but risen. Two souls. Have you ever thought about leaving here? Lena asked, fixing her gaze on Jonas. Every day, Jonas said, smiling. Then come with me, Lena said. I'm starting over. But I want someone by my side who knows what it means to fall and get back up again. Jonas raised an eyebrow. I don't have much. You have more than most people, Lena said. You have kindness. Those words struck Jonas deeper than any bullet ever could. He silently stood up, took one last look at the small garage. Rusty tools, broken chairs, oil stains. And then he looked at Lena. Okay, he said. I'm coming. They left the town together. Two people broken by the world, but refusing to stay broken. And as they headed toward a new life they never planned, the clouds in the sky finally parted. The sun shone. If this story touched you, don't forget to share your thoughts in the comments. You can contribute to the continuation of this kind of content by subscribing to our channel, liking the video, and supporting us by clicking the join button. Every comment, every like, and every support means a lot to us. Thank you.